We're live. Okay, now we're live. So welcome back to
Greetings!
Merlyn Mysteries.
It is
So
Hey,
Merlyn's
Internet.
Mystery School tonight. We are getting into the psychology of darkness.
yes, exactly.
And
And
you
today,
have.
student Zoe has a question here. She said, "What are preferences? I don't know exactly. Like,
Wait,
why?
I'm very difficult to hear. Who is? Or is it
No,
just
no, you're
everybody?
easy. You're easy to hear. I can barely hear Andy.
Okay." She
Oh.
said, "What are preferences? I don't know exactly. Like, why we like certain tastes or
Wait,
characters
wait,
as
wait, hang on. Okay. So anyway, back to her question. I don't know if I believe in an individual soul or not. Yeah, I mean, like, I can only speak on what I know from experience. I believe we do have an individual soul because I think when people talk about God or goddess, that whole thing is that the soul really has so much wisdom from all these different lifetimes. So it's like kind of like when you say, like, I have a question, I need to ask spirit a question or whatever, you go to sleep and you'll be like, well, let's sleep on that. And then you sometimes, a good portion of the time, I don't know, at least for me, you wake up with the answer, or at least some form of an answer. It's because you get access to the soul when you're asleep, so you're able to see in greater detail. And the soul knows from so many experiences, usually, and therefore it has the wisdom to answer a lot of your questions that you ask. Because you may have known the answer in a previous lifetime, you know. That makes sense.
Okay, so to answer Zoe's question about do we really have preferences or not, let's go back to what, by definition, what a soul really is. A soul is basically
Wait.
just
We're
energy,
not
right?
getting into that right now. We're teaching the class. We're not doing Q&A right now. We're getting into the class. Okay. All right. So we talked about, okay, basically the basis of what a personality is. So you will see the differences in, say, for instance, a person has, say, like a 9 to 5 or something. There's a part of them that either conforms a little bit to do the routine or the job that they need to do, and that part of them is blocking the true self. But still, there's little bits of the personality and the true self that do get shown. If you ask the person, what's your favorite type of music or whatever it is, it usually gets comes out a little bit. But because you are under this disguise of, hi, my name is so and so, and I'll be your server today, or check out person, so it's that layer is on top. It's like you're wearing a costume, you're playing a character, and that layer is on the surface, and that's what they see, but is not the true self. It is a somewhat
A
conditioned
roll.
to be able to, it's a role. Yeah. So what we're getting down to is the true self, because some of these things, in order to go further, especially with the dark side, you're going to need to be able to come to terms with a lot of these, let's just say, possible disappointments and possible, uh, some things you may just have blew it, maybe when you were younger, and you're wondering, well, how can I do that better? Coming to terms with a lot of these things, as you want to call them, the shadow self. So let's go into here.
I would call them perceptively
Personality.
adverse.
Perceptively adverse.
Yeah.
That's good. I actually got this. I went to the same college that Andy went to. It's community college. I did not attend classes. I just did a lot of reading out of a book. So, okay. Says the young child lives in a reality or world in which fantasy is not clearly distinguished from reality, in which actions are presumed to influence events in ways which to the adult would appear quite illogical or magical. Did you guys catch that?
Yeah.
Can you say that again?
The young child lives in a reality or world in which fantasy is not clearly distinguished from reality, in which actions are presumed to influence events in ways which to the adult world would appear quite illogical or magical. He just gave you the key to magic right there. Sigmund Freud.
Because basically, whenever you do magic, what you're doing is you're reaching that inner child, and it's a form of pretend. But at the same time, whenever you do it, you know, it eventually becomes part of who you are. So, in that essence, you set up this particular time and moment where you get into that magic condition, that magic moment, for any lack of any other word. Yeah,
and so that's why the robe and that's why the robe and all these different things help. Now you can, like we said, that you can invoke certain energies and they will respond because they do exist, and I guess you say, you know, of overtones of the astral plane, certain levels. These things do exist. So you can call upon that energy. Check this out. A child's world is more fluid and autistic than that of an adult, i.e., it is more determined by wishes and fantasies and less constrained by considerations of causality, time, and space. Bye, Zoe. That's all good.
Yeah, I was going to tell her she could still watch it on YouTube, but she'd already taken off.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I mean, everyone that's... It's not lagging on my end, is it?
Not that I can tell, no.
Oh, okay. Anyways, by considerations of causality, time, and space, a child's world is more fluid and autistic than that of an adult. More determined by wishes and fantasies, and less constrained by considerations of causality, time, and space. See, this is what gets human beings stuck. Time and space. Which, according to Einstein's whole theory, isn't it supposed to be relative?
Oh, absolutely. That's what he says.
So once again, no absolutes can go with this. You know, I mean, we've been conditioned, you know, and I think the digital clock plays a role in what, you know, just looking at the time over and over. It's conditioning, but, you know, because people are still going to, if they need to get somewhere, say, let's meet up at this, you know, time. But it's like Tony says, you know, it could be a tool.
Hey, anybody else wants to jump in, you know, say whatever's on your mind. I feel like Paul Schaefer on the David
Okay.
Okay, wait, we're still going into class. We're still going into class. Okay.
I know.
Freud and psychoanalysis. Low down on the evolutionary scale. Okay. He became excited by the potential of the drug cocaine, particularly its properties of reducing pain. That doesn't really have anything to do with magic, but okay, low down on the evolutionary scale. An organism's behavior is controlled by genetically programmed tendencies and interaction with environmental contingencies. Higher up the scale, the program becomes looser, and learning begins to play a progressively greater role.
And contingencies are, just for people who don't know, a contingency is like, from what I understand how the word is used, it's like a plan of action. Is that fairly accurate?
Well, I think, same kind of structure, the root of the same word is continue, and then NC. Yeah, I think they might want to look that up to be 100% sure, but I think so.
I'll do that right now. Hold on a second. Well, you don't have to hold on. But
yeah, that's good to know.
Okay, Michael, I have some questions regarding like the psychology of self, about learning how to explore like the darkness. Is Kessler?
Right.
Kessler is another way to say the inner child, or the so-called going back to the place where you were born from, because I've seen how child development or even human development works. It's like this.
Right.
First off, you start off from 1 cell, you divide it into 2 cells, and then it comes to 4, and then to 8, and then all the way to the point where you become an organism. And somehow from that organism you develop consciousness. And from that consciousness you develop barriers, or I don't know, how do you call those stuff, but we literally put it there, and we knew that it's there all along. And as we get older, we just keep adding that layer after layer after layer because of our society conditioning us. Am I correct? Going to Kessler is like going backwards on our human development.
It is basically that place of all knowing. It's kind of like right at that state, like right when you're born. It's the source. I think a good way to look at it is like return to the source.
So how can you define source in a scientific way? Because, like, for example, some people God, some people, like, for example, give it a personality. Some people even do all sorts of things. But what is God scientifically, or to the mystery school? What is it?
Well, through a mystery school doesn't mean we have to explain it scientifically. We can. What is what? Kether?
Yes, Kessler or God, or like the highest consciousness. What is that?
God is a little bit, I mean, it's different than Kether. We're talking about a Sifra as a state of consciousness.
Well, I can touch upon that a little bit if you want.
Good.
Okay, Keter on the Tree of Life, it's recognized as the first swirlings. It's like your first initial movements into the world of matter that affects it. Where above Keter is what they call the 3 veils of negative existence. The first one is the Ein Sofar, limitless light, the Ein Sof, without limit, and Ein, which is no thing that we can understand. There's just at some point we have to just say, okay, that's as much as I can know about that. Yeah, exactly. So, yep.
Makes sense. That does, well, because that's kind of the thing, you know, it's kind of the same thing as emptying the cup. Because the more that you empty your cup, I mean, it's really learning, unlearning. It's really unlearning. Like Yoda says to Luke Skywalker, and I believe that was the 5th movie.
I think so. Yeah. Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, when he goes
Empire
to
Strikes Back. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And he says, "You must." I can't even do the voice. You must unlearn what you've learned. So basically,
Very good.
and that is in Taoism a lot. Unlearning what you have learned. So we're saying there's things that are good and that can help you, and you can build with them. But the thing is, you've got to let go of that which no longer serves you. So if you learn something and you can find a positive thing that wherever you learned this from, whether it was observational or or however you learned it, you can see how is this really serving me, and is there something positive that I can get? If not, you must unlearn what you've learned. So a lot of this conditioning, programming, things that maybe you've thought about the world, for instance, you may have thought a certain culture was this way, and you may act, or whenever you see these people, you may think that they act a certain way, or they're supposed to be a certain way. And once again, that's part of the conditioning. It's unlearning. You may have watched television, and for some reason, which I still think is crazy, but you may have a certain belief about people who are Muslim, people who are a different religion or a different school of thought than you, and it is the unlearning of that was untruthful, the bias. That's what the unlearning, that's what you want to unlearn. Because believe me, bias is not helping our world one bit, being biased. Now everybody may have, their quirks. You may say everybody probably has something, but I'm saying it's the unlearning of that has been programmed to you, that you're supposed to be a certain way, supposed to dress a certain way, supposed to do things a certain way, supposed to wipe your ass a certain way. Once again, this is all programming.
Okay,
Makes sense?
Michael, I don't know if this is off topic, but can you explain to us about psychoanalysis? Because you did mention Sigmund Freud in there.
Psychoanalysis is sort of a different topic, because we're not really going into. We're talking about the darkness and the occult aspect of psychology. We're not. Okay. This is not a psychology class.
I didn't want to touch upon that.
But however, here's the weird thing.
Anyway, it's over there in the chat box. Oh, it's over there in the chat box. Contingency.
Oh, contingent.
If anybody was interested in what it was.
Yes, please. Tony, put it up on the chat box or on the YouTube.
I already have.
Oh, okay. YouTube link? Okay. Because, that would be great.
And what is the definition there is contingent, depending on something else that might or might not happen. So a contingency is something that you expect that might or might not happen. Like when you have a contingency plan, you have an alternate plan in case something does happen. So if that kind of helps you with the definition.
Yeah, and in fact, because when I read over some of the definitions on how psychoanalysis works, a lot of it came a lot from the occult science in there.
Although it's not by nature science,
but it is coming from the occult science. That's why, like, when you talk to someone, it's like all of a sudden when they talk, it's like they talk to themselves and they all of a sudden realize, I'm talking. I saw myself in there, and now I'm willing to, like, see. Okay, I found the problem. I'm willing to like release it. You know.
Well, one thing that I've heard that I really like, it was actually Winona Ryder that said it. Of course, she wasn't talking about psychoanalysis. She's talking about psychotherapy, where psychoanalysis is how you analyze what I'm about to talk about. Where psychotherapy is basically she said it's like preparing for a part in a movie, but the character that you're preparing to play a part for is you, and the movie is life.
Oh, wow.
See, so in that psychotherapy, you basically learn how to present yourself in a social manner that is quote unquote acceptable, at least without conforming completely to everybody's ideal, but at least to your own.
That makes sense. All right. All right. So we're gonna get into. Okay. Does anyone know what the word self-esteem means?
What means?
Self-esteem.
Okay. Is it okay if I take a shot out of this? Okay. What self-esteem is when you say to yourself, I know who I am, and I accept who I am today at this very
No,
moment.
I'm just asking the definition. That's good. But I'm just asking the definition.
Just in our own words, or Merriam-Webster, or what?
Well,
Because to me, self-esteem is basically just how you value yourself and your self-worth.
Okay. Okay, that's a good, okay, like high regard or high value of a self or a person.
Well, people can have, yeah, pretty much, yeah. I can see that. Yeah, because some people can have low self-esteem and others have high self-esteem, but it's basically how you view yourself and the value or worth that you have, a perceptiveness of the value or worth that you have.
That's interesting because when I got into now this was early on. This was something I had to learn early on. I'm glad I learned it early on because it helped me have a lot of the pit traps, if you will, or mouse traps in the whole metaphysical community, because it's awesome. Don't get me wrong, but there are, I don't want to say pitfalls, but certain things that basically, when I'd hear a person talking about astrology or talking about their sign or something, it was something that made them feel better about being a better person, or gave them some type of feeling of superiority, over others, or like I said, it was something that helped boosted their self-esteem. But that is not what metaphysics is about. That is not what esotericism is about. Now, these things are like little traps, and you can fall in them. And trust me, a lot of people love to raise, their self-esteem. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm saying if you're using these subjects in order to raise your self-esteem, in other words, saying, well, I'm a Pisces, so that makes me be able to do this, it makes me able to do this, make me feel good about myself. These are not what these systems are for, and these practices are for. It's not, now, you want to have a good self-esteem. Wrong. You want to hold yourself in high regard, but what I'm saying is you don't want to depend on on an astrological sign or whatever methodology or method you want to use or system you want to use. You do not want to use these just for self-esteem. This is not for self-esteem. Okay, this is for getting to the true self. So your self-esteem, you want it to be high. You want to think highly, positively about yourself, which is really good for your personality, really good for self. But self-esteem is different. Okay, I just want to point that out. All right, so we have.
If you okay if I also add in some of the stuff that you talk about, because like when it comes
Well,
to
not right now. We're still going through definitions.
oh, okay. Never mind.
We'll have a time when everyone's able to ask questions and everything. Okay. Now we're gonna go into the ego. All right, the ego. The definition, according to, I believe this was Merriam-Webster, the self distinguished from others, the one of the three divisions of the psyche and psychoanalytic theory that is the organized conscious mediator between the person and reality. You see? So there's like a layer, a bridge you have to almost cross to get to this true self. This golden, light, you want to call it that, this true self, your higher self. In order to get into contact with that, you have the ego. Now, the ego, biblically, is usually represented as what they call the devil, which really is just a Latin word which just means the opposer, or, the antagonist. Now, you'll see good examples, especially like the whole thing where Yeshua, which they refer to as Jesus, gets tempted. He meditates for 40 days, 40 nights, and his ego basically tempts him to, give up. You don't have to. Basically the ego that comes out. Now, there's different, according to Sigmund Freud, there's different. There's the ego, the superego, the id, and basically those different, the subconscious and the unconscious, I believe. So the ego is like the invisible clothes. Everyone needs an ego in this dualistic reality on planet Earth. Everyone needs an ego in order to operate and do what they need to do. If you didn't have an ego, for example, it's like a baby walking across the street. The ego is what helps protects them and tells them not to do something silly, not to do, not to do something crazy, not to. It is like the security that kind of, it's the, and that's really what the ego is. There's two different kinds of voices that you can kind of listen to. When you hear a voice that kind of comes to you and is kind of like, how can I serve? How can I be of service? How can I help others? How can I make this world a better place? How can I be of service? Things like this is coming from a higher place, and you can feel the vibration, a vibration of love. When you hear certain voices like, this is mine, this is all mine, you can't do that. People will laugh at you. You shouldn't do that. You're not ready for this. You're not ready for, whatever it may be. What can I get out of this for myself? What can I get from this? There's a difference. The higher voice and the more colder voice is the difference. One is resonating from the heart. It's coming from a place of love. That's the higher self. One that's resonating on a place based here, that is coming from the ego. So everyone has an ego. It's not about defeating the ego. It's not about, meditating for 40 days or 40 nights trying to get rid of the ego. It's coming to an agreement that the ego is only here to serve you, but it's going to serve you the way you ask. Well, it's like a genie, like in a letter. If you ask a wish, in other words, if you make a wish and you say certain things, if you're not specific, you can get a whole bunch of different things, because that's really what the subconscious mind does. It kind of points your focus to what it is that you want, and then you begin to see more and more of it, and begin to see it show up in your life. And it's only because you've asked the genie, subconscious mind, to put that for you, to give that forth. So that's the difference.
Well, one thing, if I might, I think I like looking at the ego almost like you're an author of a book, and the character that you're writing about in that book is the ego. It's a character you created, so it's totally under your control once you realize that. It's totally part of who you are. It's like Huckleberry Finn, is Huckleberry Finn, and Mark Twain is Huckleberry Finn, but Huckleberry Finn is not Mark Twain. You see? And Mark Twain, of course, was the author of the Huckleberry Finn novels. So, in that essence, yeah. And whenever it gets to a point where the ego starts thinking that it's the author, that's when there comes to be the problem, because then it's in a false perception, and you have to take it back to where it's supposed to be. And that's whenever sometimes you have to deal with these quote-unquote shadows, is because these shadows are beginning to believe they are the author. And it's not that way at all.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Where it's not that way at all. Yeah, you are the author. Yeah. You might not even realize what kind of author you are, or what kind of books you write, and you don't necessarily have to say author. You are the creator of those egos, that you set up as representatives in your life, but you are not your representative. Your representative has you within it, but you are way more than that. And if the representative ever comes to the point of perceiving itself as the creator, then you have a problem. So you have to be able to not only educate, but befriend that representative, that ego, and let it realize what its purpose is.
Interesting.
At least that's
Very
how I look at it.
Well, that's very true. Because what you're really doing, the Wizard of Oz is a great example. What you're really doing is you're going on a journey, and you meet up with all these faces and all these wonderful people, and you meet up with all these characters in order to go on this journey. But you're going on this journey to figure out really who you are. Like Bruce Lee says, to me, all knowledge ultimately means self-knowledge. In other words, when you find happiness in yourself, when you find love within yourself first, just like the same thing, I'll give an example. Say for Reiki or something, I could learn how to give Reiki to another person, or I could learn how to heal another person. But if I can't heal, if I don't know the power of my own healing on myself, how can I really know how it's going to be on the other person? So it's like you build it within self, and then you can project it towards others. You can help others, and it's all about helping others. But self always go first. Self always go first. You got to prepare a meal for yourself before you can. You got to feed yourself before you feed other people. Because if you're hungry or starving or whatever you may say, but the other people have already eaten and you're preparing food for them, you see, every comes with self first, and then just projecting to other versions of yourself on possibly a different journey, or just another journey.
I totally got an analogy from that. It's almost like, if you was one person in charge of the whole world eating, and you didn't eat yourself, who would feed the world? Because you would die, because you have to eat. So, and so, yeah.
That's true.
I totally just relate with that.
Well, yeah, see? So this whole thing goes back to your story. This is your story. You are the hero in the story, but maybe forgotten. A lot of us could have forgotten. But how we forgot? Is conditioning. And that's the purpose of the condition. But you've got to play your part, which is basically to not necessarily counteract, but deprogram, cut out the bullshit, or at least throw it away, and find the true self. Because if something is not real, in a sense, we're just talking about, in other words, if somebody just decides not to believe in something, depending, again, what it is, if something did not exist within the universe, existence, say it was just a thought form, the less and less energy that person gives to that thought form, it begins to fade away. Either transform into another form of energy, or just poof into nothingness. So when we talk about, let's see here. See, we went through that. Genesis. Blah blah blah. All right, let me get another book here. I'll be right back.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions so far about what Michael talked about so far?
Here I am.
Yeah, feel free to put it in the chat box if you want to, or Facebook, either one.
Now we're reading a lot of definitions tonight, but this is because this is more part of the understanding versus the practical application. Let's see here.
Yeah, I think it's really important. It's really important to, especially if you're studying. Anytime you're studying, if you like, because most of us, we do take a solitary practitioner standpoint as far as how we study, how we research. And any time that you're reading and you come upon a word you don't know, absolutely look it up so you will know and be able to take that information that you're trying to learn into the right context. And it flows a lot easier as well when you study, because then once you know that word, you can move on. But if you keep reading,
then you can move on. Yep.
Yeah. So if you keep reading and you don't know what a word means, subconsciously you're going to keep your mind back on that word. It's like, well, what does that word mean? So.
Yeah, that's actually true.
Yeah.
I've done that before. I know exactly. Yeah, you'll still keep. It's like in the back of your mind, like, hey, what does that mean?
And you can't really pick up on anything else that you're reading until you finally do what you can to learn what that actual word means, so you can flow on with the study.
True. All right. Here we're gonna go into the id. The part of the psyche. Remember, psyche means soul. The part of the psyche and psychoanalytic theory. Theo means God. And then re. That is completely unconscious and concerned with instinctual needs and drives. Okay, so this is your basic needs. It's usually associated with the pleasure principle. A way to think of it is basically, I think I gave this example before, like in the movie, was it Animal House?
I think that's the one you was talking about the other night in the hangout.
Yeah. Okay. In Animal House, when it shows like there's like a scene where it's just like this guy has this opportunity to be with this lady, and an angel like a little devil pops out, like a little devil pops up on one shoulder, and it's like, fuck her brains out. And then there's like an angel that pops up on one shoulder and is like, don't you dare touch that pretty poor little girl. So that's really the difference, is you have those parts in the psyche. Like I said, it's completely unconscious and concerned with instinctual needs and drives. So it's not necessarily survival mode, but it's, say for instance, chocolate almonds. You want some chocolate almonds. You want you crave possibly, you know, something sweet, chocolate, whatever. You
Also,
know.
can I say something?
Go ahead, Mike.
So taking etymology into consideration, and what etymology is the origin of words, where they come from, and the power of the phonetics, the sounds they make involved. Id can be connected to identity, id entity, which is what we exchange.
I thought of that too.
Yeah,
Yep.
or awareness of the whole. So we take on this identity, which starts with, you know, being called our names, like I'm Michael, that's who I am. Is that really who you are? And so we start associating words, and part of the role of the id, kind of, in my opinion, you forget the origin and the power of the words. And the labels themselves take on how they take over your mind rather than the spirit of the things we're observing themselves, including ourselves.
You know, that is so true. I never even realized that the word entity is in. Wow.
Can I
didn't
see
either. That is so
that
awesome.
that is really profound.
Same thing here. Like when you guys talk about what identity or even the word entity, yeah, Michael, you also brought up the word entity. It also it's almost like the word ID, but with the E on there. You know.
Like
and
identifying.
what it does, the identity takes away from our being. The identity is separation, is a separation or separations of our identity, and it's not that the separations are in and of themselves bad. Otherwise, the universe would still be one, right? I mean, this is all a process of the universe getting to know each other, which is why I think, or know itself. And I think it's really important to remember that and not polarize things as good or evil, to recognize the neutrality of it all. But that is not to say that the role of self can't decipher what is right and wrong to self. There's definitely a difference there.
That makes sense. But the interesting thing that I understood is if there was no hero, or if there was no villain, there would be no need for a hero. But if there was no hero, there would be no need for a villain. Like, for instance, if there was no Batman, there would be no need for the Joker. It's because they're opposite. In other words, Batman would always without some form of villain, because in a way it shows another side of the coin. And in a world of duality, it is almost like the hero needs the villain needs the hero, because they're just two opposites, two polarities, two different polarities.
And I
Like
think
Neo and Mr. Anderson.
I think the reason why duality is such an important reoccurring theme is because I think it's obvious that the universe itself has gone far, far beyond duality, but the human mind is kind of stuck there because we don't recognize the duality. And so that's why I appreciate this.
Right, Michael. But like, here's what I found out, like from what Michael was talking about and psychology and child development. Here's why we are in duality. It has a lot to do with survival and belonging. You know, before we can self-realize, we have to feel belonged, or we have to feel like we are surviving, or our needs are being met. Because when we came into existence into this world, we need to exist. That's the basic need of every living being. Death is like the ultimate loss of that freedom to their own perception. That's what
right. Well, that's what the id is, the basic needs and drives. It's completely unconscious and concerned with instinctual needs and drives. That means food, usually, food, hygiene, I guess that could be put in that category. Sex, definitely. I don't know really what else. Protection, I guess. Feeling safe. But basically instinctual needs and drives. This is based supposedly, instinct. They're talking about usually evolution. From humanity's evolution, the needs and drives of man. Which I'm including the woman when I say man. I mean mankind. So the difference is that expression. It's like, I'm sure at least one of you has been in a situation where you've either been with an attractive female or male, and you may have been in a situation where it's just like either it's a work situation or whatever it was, but it's just like if we were not working right now, we were not professionally like I tap that, like that's the way I could think of it. Like I would love to get naughty with you. That makes sense. And that's really the id. I mean, it's really, but because you're either in a work situation or whatever, you have a girlfriend, blah blah blah. That's the prevention. That's the super ego saying, no, 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 you don't want to do that. You just stay working, It'll pass, But it's that instinctual drive. It's part of the lust and carnal nature of man, which I believe, and I'm not saying I can't say 100%. I wouldn't say this is a generalization, but from what I've heard and read of, as far as in what they call Satanism, not all, because I can't say it, but it seems that a lot of the philosophy and certain things seem to be more carnal desires. Seems to be really focused on the id. I don't know. What would you say about that, Tony?
Yeah, actually, I was just thinking like an upside down pentagram. How the point up top that like is in charge of the bottom four, which are just as important, but they're like elemental natures of mankind. And of course, that also would have to do with their animalistic tendencies, that ID mentality, and that top point on the pentacle, that's like the spirit, that little angel sitting on your shoulder saying, no, 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 And so, and when they flip that upside down, that's basically telling that angel, just shut up. I'm going to do what I want to do. Because I'm the greatest, I'm so powerful, I am the biggest, baddest person in the valley type of thing.
There's also the Pentagon in the middle.
Oh yeah, but there's a balance there. There actually is. So you can. There's really, just like Michael was saying earlier. When you look at duality, it really is only in perception, because something that is good to one person might not be good to another. Just like the difference between big and small. Let's just say a marble or a ping pong ball a basket.
Right.
A softball might be larger, but if you're talking to like a basketball about a softball, it would see it as smaller. So,
Small.
but it's the same thing as Michael was talking about as far as the platonic solids go. Just because there's a different number of sides doesn't mean one is any more than the other. It's just all in the perception.
Self-perception. That's well. See, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that
That makes
does.
a lot of sense because it.
Okay, so here's what when it comes to occult magic or even like the mystery schools, here's what I just don't get. Like, I don't know if Michael, you can help me answer this, but what is like the difference between what we call the left-hand path and the right-hand path? Because Satanism always identifies itself with the left-hand path.
It's what what I've understood, and see my whole thing is, I swear there's like a face looking at me through the door. Basically, like the thing about it, and I don't want to. When I first got into this information, I could say, oh yeah, that's kind of, that can be spooky, and it's meant to be, or at least on the surface. But what I've seen as far as, and I'm not making any prejudgments, that with the whole thing with, well, kind of like Tony said, just mad Christians, or but well, with what I've learned as far as with Satanism is that at the end of it all, it's like a darker form of light. In other words, you're confronting the shadows, you're confronting the demons in another way. So it comes to a point where it's a appreciation, but it may be a little bit more than appreciation, or honoring of the darker self or shadow self.
Now, here's the thing, Michael. Yeah, I get it, but like the question is like, in the end, what does Satanism or any form of left-hand path practice aim to do? Is it aiming to like so-called dissolve the identity to like become the source, or what happened? Because in many right-hand path religions, like for example, or some of the light ways, they seek to dissolve that ego in such a way that you become the self. Versus the left-hand path is the opposite, where you're trying to like be that source.
I think Tony would give a good definition on that from experience.
Yeah. Excuse me. But well, first of all, left hand and right hand. Everybody has two hands. I myself am right hand, but what about left-handers?
I'm right-handed too.
Do they feel like
Yep.
that their path is wrong because it's been designated as a left-hand path or a right-hand path? You can't really relegate it to one side or the other of the human body, because the human body is a whole. And it's the same way with whether it be Satanism or light working or what have you. There's two sides to it, and I can see
because
where
they're a system.
Well, most of what I know about Satanism, it has to do with becoming like Andy said, just realizing the source and not really caring whether or not trying to help somebody else get to that source, because you're already there, you've done the work, you've done the job, so why should it matter? But then on the light worker side of it, I mean, it's still the whole process of getting to know who you are and be authentic. But on the light side of it, where Satanism is more like, from what I have been exposed to, it's more like ruling through fear and where light working is ruling through harmony, or not ruling through harmony, but unifying through harmony. And through that unification, you reach out to help. But there's also the negative golden rule, that and just like there's as much do unto others as you would have them do unto you, there is also the negative golden rule of don't do unto others as you would have them not do unto you. So there's actually, it's the same thing, but it's on both sides. So, and I believe that the Satanists follow the negative golden rule. They don't do unto others as they'd have them not do unto them, where the light workers are more of an active, searching out for trying to help people and work on.
Which a lot of them have good hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're searching or seeking unification and harmony. But I mean, by my own understanding and the way I've lived, it's just like I talked about it the other night. If you're it's basic strategy if you think about it. As far as like most Satanists, they're very much so involved with themselves, and through that superiority, through that manipulation, they provoke fear, and that's how they can control somebody. And what that does is, they have to constantly keep an eye on their back, because that person might not necessarily want to be controlled, and at some time or another, they're going to want to take the throne. They're going to want to take the high spot so that they can be the one that doesn't have to do what people say. And it's kind of like that in society, if you really think about it. It's like terrible bosses, it's like, oh, one of these days, pow, right in a kisser, I'm going to like take up,
one of these days.
One of these, so there's that like, I guess you would say, hierarchy that rules through fear. It's like, well, if you don't do what you're told, you're going to lose your job. And even no matter how bad I treat you, if you want a paycheck and you want to be able to support yourself, you have to do this. But somebody somewhere is going to be like, I can do what he's doing better, and I'll take his job, and then he'll have to answer to me. But even your boss has to answer to somebody else in that situation, and that's the hierarchy of what I consider to what I consider in society as a way that it's ruled by fear. Fear of being fired, fear of losing your job, stuff of that nature. Where when you get, just let me wrap up the rest real quick, Michael. But yeah, whenever you get to the lighter side of things, it's people choosing to do what they can, the best that they can, for the benefit of the whole, for the benefit of unity and harmony. So whenever you got the ones ruling through fear, they always have to watch their back. Harmony and unity doesn't have to watch their back. So they're not fighting a battle on two sides, on two fronts, whenever it's harmony and unity and people are looking and serving by choice, or doing what the best they can by choice. Where if it's the ruling through fear, you're always going to have to fight the battle on more than one front. And throughout history, strategically, any country that ever tried to wage a war on two battlefronts would lose, because of that simple thing. They divide themselves, and by dividing, you weaken.
Divide and conquer. That's
exactly.
So, like that's what I was also thinking. It's like,
hold on, Andy. I cut Michael off. What was you gonna say, Michael Lloyd?
From what I understand, Satanism at its very core focuses on and celebrates the flesh and all the senses that the flesh can sense. And those are pretty basic needs. There's pleasure and there's pain, and then there's contentment, which is kind of in the middle. But that duality can be manifested in control of others, because in order or manipulation of self. But it's very much focused on just the physical, what you can feel with your skin and what you can see with your eyes, and that's how I understand what Satanism is.
Makes sense.
right, but like that's what I was also thinking. Is like, how is that going to be healthy for you in spirituality? Like, how is that going to help you progress in your path?
It can be helpful for someone who really wants to know that.
Well, the way that I look at it, it's I guess you would say it's tough love. You know, it's like the Hermes.
That's just
the
more.
Hermes,
That is exactly.
you know,
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
a
the
good.
Hermes part of everybody.
That's
You
what I
know,
was gonna say.
that trickster. Sometimes you have to teach people lessons to get them to a better point, you know, within themselves, to get them to their greatest version. And they might not be willing to, but like, you know, somebody is in a situation where they have to be taught a lesson no matter what that might be. You have to get into that overlord mentality, you know, that subdual type of nature. Exactly. Yeah.
Right, and
Like Yoda kicking ass, flipping around, taking names. You know, that's what he has to do because it has to be a lesson taught, and also to provide and promote an atmosphere for the growth of unity and harmony. But the realization that we do also have to have that more, not necessarily satanic, but that more manipulative attitude when dealing with certain people and certain situations. But it's very important to keep a balance. Yeah.
so this is what I notice about like some people who follow Satanism for a long time is that if they were too involved with it, I sense that their energy was like knocked off balance. You know, it was like one side they always had to fear for their lives all the time. That's like that's the first thing that I noticed.
Well, what about somebody who is a light
like
worker?
Heather. Say like Heather.
Oh, I was just going to say,
But
what if
she-
somebody that's like a light worker? You know,
Light workers
they keep.
yeah.
But listen to what I'm saying. If they if they just keep, you know, putting themselves in battle after battle of trying to help other people, and they don't have that selfish nature, which is important. You have to feed, just like Mike was saying earlier. You have to feed the feeder, or nobody gets fed. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, you absolutely have to be, and you know, you can't go out and in a world that follows these universal laws of duality and stuff of that nature, which are natural, but you can rise above them to the actual source, and not be ready to encounter a situation where you have to use both aspects of the force, both the light side and the dark side.
Luke.
Thank you. Can you help me,
Like
Mike?
that's what I was thinking. It was
Return
like
of the Jedi.
Yeah,
That is actually one of the best analogies that I've heard, Tony. When you explained that to me, I got it, and I said it's the same thing as there's a Solomon seal. There's 72 angels. There's 72 daemons. But
right.
together, it's a circle.
Yep.
And
that's
you knowing
exactly
how
right.
to use both is the Magi or the alchemist.
But it's very important, you know, to build on a foundation of not only light and understanding unity and harmony, but also the archangels, because the archangels, they don't trick. The angels, they don't trick. They don't try to get you into a situation where you feed your ego and feed whatever entity you're dealing with, because they are what they are and they do what they do. And it's better to start. That's why we started doing the light work first with the middle pillar and the lesser banishing ritual or pentagram, and using the God names, because those influences are beautiful. They're loving, and they're within themselves. They promote a sense of security through our conditioning. So, and it's important to be able to have that foundation when you're dealing with the 72 other daemons that, you know, might not necessarily.
But they're no chumps.
Yeah, they're not chumps. Not in any way or form or fashion. Archangel Michael carries a very large blade and is fully capable of using it. You know, so it's not about being weak. It's about being meek. You know, so they give themselves to others for the reason of unity and harmony. But it's just like it says in Genesis, you know, that they ate of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, and if they ate of the tree of life, they would be just like us. So they knew And they know both good and evil.
Well, it's interesting that you said that about meek, because there's like this verse that says like, when I perish, the meek shall inherit the earth, or something like that.
Oh yeah, well yeah, what that's talking about.
I heard it on a Jay-Z song, but
that is a good way to point it out. I mean, actually, I never really thought about it. You might even look up the definition of meek and what it means. But what I believe it is even though that you know that you could accomplish something, you give way to others who might need that information or that lesson more so than you. So
that's it.
You know,
that's it.
Okay.
That's exactly what I'm. That's the state that I've always. That's the state that I've always. That's what people remember me. Okay, I want to say it for me, but I'm saying when people remember certain things and certain things that I've taught them, I've always. There's a good example or analogy of this. It's like the wise old man who is also. Well, it's like the wise elder or the wise old man that's also a laughing little boy. Or it's like a wise old man in a little boy's body, or vice versa. Because what that really shows is you have acquired all this wisdom, but you're always able to have the perception and the perspective of a beginner.
Right.
Because there's no end to the information. It's limitless, infinite. So it's like you always just say, well, I may know a little, but I don't know shit compared to the universe.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But you have an understanding of saying, well, it's not that I know anything. And, well, I mean, that's what Socrates says. But it's not that, necessarily I know nothing. I know enough that I'm glad that I know what I know. But it's a constant having an open head or, open teacup ready for the information to pour in.
Well,
because compared to the universe,
that's like being receptive and open. But as far as meek goes, what I would say meek is, since it's a topic to be understood, is excuse me, you're basically giving way to something that you could take absolutely pure, absolutely without a doubt, for a fact. It's like if somebody stepped up to you and you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that you could win a fight, but you don't necessarily want to fight because they may not learn something, and if you give way to somebody to learn something, then you're being meek. If you know that you can handle not eating for a couple of days, and there's a little kid there, and you know you're hungry, but there's a little kid there and all there is like one piece of food left, you give it to that kid because you know you can handle it. And that kid might not be able to, and they're still growing, and you've already grown, type of thing, right? And it's not like and that's what I see meek as. Yeah, that's an example. That's how I see meek as. You're giving way to something that in essence, you actually do not necessarily deserve, but that you need because other people need it more.
So that's the reason why you inherit the earth, then, when you are that way.
Yeah, because if you inherit the earth, then whenever you are that way, you're a caretaker.
You don't really have to prove anything to anyone.
Right.
Because you already know.
Yeah.
You don't have to convince anyone how deep you are or how much knowledge you have.
Right, and
that's
just
how powerful you are. Because exactly.
Yeah. Because you have an upside down star.
Like that's what I noticed. Like a lot of times, like when, like back in the old days when Christianity was ruling the planet, like this is how they define meek, as someone who is very submissive. Let's put it that way.
And that's wrong.
Yeah, and like at first, like a lot of times, like for example, from what you define it, Michael, at first I really hate that word a lot, you know, because
What?
being submissive,
Meek?
yeah, being submissive will not get you anywhere in life. You're just letting people stomp on you.
Yeah, but if you give way, you're actually not. You're not being submissive. You're allowing somebody else to go before you because you've already learned that lesson, or
That
they
means
need food
that
more
means
than you do, or they need
right.
water more than you do, and you know you can handle it, or you can get
That
more.
means
You can
that
handle
means
it.
I know. That means I have
That's a
capability
good
to do
example.
anything I do, but I just like I'm willing to forfeit that for someone else.
Right, that's being me. Because you know, it's not really
Well,
forfeiting it, it's just having
it's not
patience
really,
to know
yeah.
it'll come in time. You know, you don't have to have
It's
it like
kind of
right
like you
away.
have an abundance, so you can give your share because you know it's not going to hurt you.
Exactly, yeah.
You have an abundance. And so there's plenty for everyone.
But at the same time, being meek is not being self-righteous. So if you give like somebody your last piece of food, don't do it and then regret it. Don't feel bad about it, you know, because that's not the point. The point is to feel the love from giving it, that somebody else can get that nourishment. And you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you can get more.
True.
But you know, it's just basically endurance. If you want to get right down to it, it's being able to endure and let somebody else go forth that might not have as much endurance.
Oh my God, Tony! Like I think like from what you're
Exactly.
telling me about like the Beatitudes, especially about meekness, what I found out that what Jesus taught, like he summarized his teaching into two things. First off, he said, "Love one another as you love yourself," and love whatever's up there, like with your wholeheartedness. It has a lot to do with the fact that you say that I am willing to give up some parts of myself so that others can thrive and that I can thrive with them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what it basically means. It's like when I love others, that means part of me out there, no matter how many out there, it belongs to me
Yeah.
already.
Yeah. Because you're just helping yourself. And the life that you're living right now, you know you can endure it, and you don't know if you're in another lifetime, if you can. You're at that point where you can, so you try to help yourself in another
So
lifetime.
like, here's the thing that I really want to know if we can get ourselves into homework because especially like the shadow self, there's going to be a lot of
Homework.
homework when it comes to this stuff. Like,
As far as homework.
I know.
I've got something that Till Swan did. It's finding your suppressed self, and what it is it's a chart that you can do with 6 columns on it to find your suppressed self, and I'll post that on the event page.
That sounds really
Oh,
good.
great. Sweet, Michael. In fact,
Tony, were you thinking? Were we gonna do the lesser? Wait, is that the greater banishing ritual of the hexagram?
Oh wow, I hadn't planned on it.
No, we don't have to. I'm just wondering.
Since tonight is really just working more with the practical aspect and not the working with, or you know, just working on the definitions and stuff like that. I think I would.
It's not as
rather
much
not.
practical, yeah.
Yeah, it's not as much practical. It's more like I guess you'd say study.
Okay. Well, I mean, I wasn't like pushing you to or anything.
Oh no, absolutely no. No, I push back anyway, so it doesn't matter. But it's okay. But yeah.
But you know that, right? I mean,
yeah, definitely. Yeah. But no, I don't want to do it tonight. I think we can do it like next week, and I'll be more prepared for it because I'm not even prepared for it right now.
Yeah, we can.
So
We
here,
can do that because I mean that's a little bit more in detail than the
so Michael, I
lesser
think
banishing ritual of the
Like, we
pentagram.
can
actually, like, I guess I have to stop the broadcast right now. But like, if you guys have any suggestions on homeworks, like, put it up on my Facebook, and then I'll copy and paste it to
Okay,
the comment
okay.
box.
For homework, okay, I've got some things for homework. Okay, what you want to do is basically begin to write down and share, but do something that okay. As long as you know, like we said, we follow the law of non-interference. Not anything that hurts anyone, not anything that you know goes against a person's free will. We're talking about things you do for yourself. For instance, like me, I drink my own urine sometimes.
Well, one thing that I could think of that you might do is
We've done that before.
in
Or,
some
you know,
situation.
The Western man.
What I was thinking is in some situation where you would normally back down, stand up for yourself. You know, because that does require the shadow self. But don't, you know, get too rough with people. But you know, delve into
Right.
that idea of, you know, I don't have to be a pushover. I can actually tell people what's on my mind. But, you know, think it through. Recognize you are dealing with yourself in another lifetime, and the best thing that you can do is teach a lesson. And the teaching a lesson is not always rainbows and unicorns, you know. Sometimes you have to bring out other people's shadows as well and let them see them, like, firsthand right in front of their face. So, well, I'm not saying start any fights or nothing like that, but just if somebody says something that gets you the wrong way, you know, say something about it. Say, I don't like how that makes me feel, and you know, and I would appreciate if you wouldn't do it anymore, type of thing. And that's one warning. You don't get another.
True.
okay.
Well, what Tony was sharing with the suppressed self,